I was at a fiscal management conference yesterday for Iowa Association of School Boards. I only have, I don't know if anyone out here wants them. I've got about 4 I can share. Thank you. One over here for the principal. I was at a fiscal management conference yesterday, and there were all sorts of issues. As you can imagine, the primary issue is rising expenses for utilities and for fuel costs in schools. And the board to think that that the legislators would give us money, but there are things that they could do that could relax some rules or some code for us so that we have a little more flexibility with some of the funds that we do have. One of the things that one of the sessions I went to yesterday was on transportation, and the person who conducted the session is a specialist in transportation in Iowa, and he just said, if you have another session you'd like to go, because he said, I have no new ideas about how to save costs on transportation. He said, we expect diesel to be $6 a gallon. You know all the things you need to do. You need to drive fewer miles, and you need to have drivers driving less, and those are your 2 expenses. So from there, you're kind of on your own. Everybody stayed for the session. Prior to that, Mr. Litter, Mr. Tellinghusen, Phil House, and I had met on Monday morning early, and we probably spent an hour just talking about high school transportation, and then we sort of overlapped into middle school. So there's some things written on here that take care of middle school kids, and but things that we really believe that we're going to need to do. Our transportation goal is to reduce costs by reducing mileage and our driver costs. And I ask you to go to the very bottom of the page first and take a look. Our annual transportation report is due in August, the very last day of August. So the 2008 report is not done for either district. So you're looking at the transportation report that was from the 2006-2007 school district, or school year. The total route and non-route miles for buses for SAC, about 71,000, for Wall Lakeview Auburn, about 101,000. I should preface that by saying SAC has 98 square miles in the school district, if you want to make a note of that. Wall Lakeview Auburn has 185 square miles. Because you're going to look at that and go, so why all the difference in miles? Well, you're going to look at different numbers of kids that are being transported, but you're talking about different kinds of miles that the districts are driving. Average numbers of students transported per day, 207 at SAC, 327 at Wall Lakeview Auburn. Average cost per mile traveled was $2.11 versus $2.33, and then the average cost per pupil transported. And you can look at the difference of 509 versus 614. I didn't give the results, nor did I give these to Wall Lakeview Auburn Monday night at their meeting for one to look good and one to look bad. These are the facts of what the 2 districts are dealing with for transportation. The asterisk at the bottom, 2 years ago, each district's costs were in the range of $1.60 to $1.80 mile. We think that this will jump up close to $2.60 for the 08 year, and then we have no idea where it's going to go after that, as you can well imagine. The 2008 transportation report, again, is due the 31st. I have that data. I'll give it to you. Some suggestions of things that we came up with, and things that we really think are not just suggestions, but things that we really need to enact. Some of the things that we do, but we think we have to be far more vigilant about, is that we take as few vehicles as possible, or that we take smaller vehicles when it's appropriate, just because we get better gas mileage. And the second thing is, when we take smaller vehicles like our vans, we don't, any one of our activity directors can drive those. It doesn't take a CDL. We are short of bus drivers, just across the board. It's across the state of Iowa problem, okay? Short of bus drivers. We have drivers to run the route. Both districts are short on substitute bus drivers. We have some coaches that have CDLs, but we'd like to see more of our coaches have CDLs. So that's one of the suggestions that we make in here. For middle school, we don't plan on running any shuttle buses after the middle school home games. What we find last year, we'd have a bus sitting out here after middle school volleyball, and we'd have a bus and a driver sitting and waiting, and 2 kids from Wall Lakeview Auburn would ride that bus because everybody else's parents picked them up. And so we're going to let middle school know in advance that we're not transporting after home games. Home football games here for middle school, Wall Lakeview Auburn kids will have to find their own way home. Okay, so we're talking about those home games, and we're saying this because our experience has been very, very poor with the amount of money and time we committed to it and the number of writers. So we're just going to inform kids in advance. That's how it is. Mom and Dad, if you can't be at the game, then you find out how, you make arrangements for somebody else to be able to transport those kids. I did, and I should have talked about this at the beginning. I talked to the schools in our conference that have multiple buildings in multiple towns. Nobody, the things that I have written on here, nobody else did what we were doing. Okay? And one of the things we talked about in that first year of whole grade sharing is making sure that we got it going and we got things off the ground. I asked a couple of the superintendents, did you see any decrease in the number of middle school kids who go out for activities when parents have to take more responsibility for driving and we're delivering them less often to home? And they're like, no, we have not, that, but it's been a practice in our district that we haven't done that, so people are used to having to provide that transportation. And remember, 2 of those schools in our conference are the same size as number of students as East Sac County, so we're talking about relatively the same number of square miles and distance that people might have to travel. There may be drop-offs in a community, and by that what I mean is if we play junior high football, middle school football in Lake City, it would be rather stupid on our part as we come through Auburn not to pull off one block, stop, drop off 6 kids if they live in Auburn. So if we're coming through a town on the way home, meaning a town meaning Sac City, Wall Lake, Lakeview, or Auburn, because we drive different buses to different activities depending on who's available and and where the activity is. We're going to drop off, but kids will know that in advance. So I'm coming home from a junior high football game, and I could tell my parents, the game is in Southern Cal, they're going to drop kids off in Auburn. I can just get in Auburn, off at Auburn. I live in the country, you can come and pick me up there. If the bus is from Sac City, it will drop off in the communities, come on back here, and kids will be dropped off at this building too. So for some games, we'll drop off probably in every community, but for some games we will not. But students will know that in advance, so parents can make arrangements. In fact, when we were talking about this, Telly said, you know what, I could put something out so that the first day of orientation, that could be handed to middle school parents so they know exactly what that transportation is like. No shuttles after practice, and basically what that means is we'll get them back to their community, but this is really more of an issue at Wall Lake View Auburn, where kids were transported then to Wall Lake, and that was Wall Lake View Auburn's expense. They were transported to Wall Lake and Auburn, and Wall Lake View Auburn's not going to continue to do that. And I should tell you, this is a big thing at Wall Lake View Auburn. That bus has gone for 25 years to Auburn, and the district has said we cannot afford to do that anymore. Coaches with CDLs will drive as much as possible. Our 2 coaches for junior high football both have CDLs, so we never hire a driver. Much of our expense comes from, we hire a driver, they sit for 4 hours, and we're paying for sitting time. We hire a driver and they go to a volleyball tournament and they sit all day. We might pay $120 for a driver to sit there. At high school level, no early bird banner bus. There were some board members that took a lot of heat for that last year, I think. Numerous phone calls. Administrators were. I know I was. And we had, of the families who called and wanted it the most, none of their children ever rode that bus. So we're not hiring anyone for that morning anymore. We might have had 3 kids at the most, and that was maybe 1 day a week. So that early bird van and bus was done. We'd hire a driver and they'd sit there and wait. And then actually we committed to pay them as if they were going to go down on the routes. We paid them as if they drove there, but they never drove because nobody showed up. No transportation to practice when school is not in session. And I'll start out by thinking about Christmas vacation. Wherever wrestling practice and basketball practice are over Christmas, simply because there's no school, we don't transport kids to it. Kids have to get to either Lakeview or Wall Lake or to Sac City on their own. Before school, when football starts 2 weeks before school actually starts, we will not be transporting high school football players to Sac City is our recommendation. We don't do it any other non-school times. We kind of wondered why we started that before school last year. So high school football and volleyball players, and I've actually talked to both of those coaches today, the head coaches, to just say, just let your kids know they're going to have to find a way to get there. Once school starts, they ride the bus down to go to school. They stay there for practice, and then we run a shuttle back to Sac City to get them back to this community, because their vehicles are